Imagine sitting on a throne that, well, literally keeps you alive, but the fuel it requires is the violent, agonizing sacrifice of 1,000 human souls every single day.
Right, and the machinery just physically drains their life force until they are nothing but desiccated husks.
Exactly, just husks. And this is all just to keep your own ruined, rotting body from finally expiring. But here's the absolute worst part. You built this throne to save them.
It is the ultimate cosmic irony. You design this massive instrument of salvation, and it just becomes the very apparatus of your eternal torture and really the damnation of your entire empire.
Yeah, looking at this massive stack of source material you've provided us today, we've got campaign books, these incredibly dense lore codexes, character case studies, and we're looking at an event that shatters the usual way we think about human history.
Right, because usually we expect this sort of linear progression.
Exactly. We invent agriculture, we build cities, split the atom, reach the stars. Upward and onward, right. But when you dive into the 31st millennium of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, that ladder of progress isn't just broken. It has been ground into absolute dust.
Completely obliterated.
So we are opening the sources today on the axial defining moment of this entire setting, the Horus Heresy. Okay, let's unpack this.
The premise we really have to establish immediately for you, the listener, is that everything taking place before this era is merely prologue. It's just the setup.
Right.
And everything happening for the 10,000 years after it,
Right.
pure unadulterated consequence. We are looking past the superficial elements of, standard sci-fi.
Yeah, bolters, the void shields, the massive space fleets.
Exactly. We're looking past all that to examine the architecture of a classical Greek tragedy. Only this one is performed on a galactic stage.
The themes leaping out of these texts are just wild. Blinding hubris, forbidden knowledge, the psychology of demigods. I mean, if we look at the older cosmic conflicts in this lore, you could argue that prior conflicts broke the physical galaxy.
Right, like the ancient war in heaven.
Yeah, exactly. But this event, the Horus Heresy, is the event that permanently broke humanity's soul. So, considering you probably already know the major players and the grim, dark reality of the 41st millennium, our mission today is a bit different.
We're going to dissect the actual mechanics of this tragedy.
Right. We need to figure out how the most mathematically logical, rigorously planned rescue mission in human history resulted in its darkest, most enduring nightmare. It's a massive cautionary tale about leadership, micromanagement, and, honestly, the catastrophic danger of ignoring human emotion.
To map out that failure, we really have to examine the psychological and environmental ashes that the architect of this plan was trying to rise from. We're looking at the end of the Age of Strife, which is roughly 30,000 AD.
And humanity had just spent 5,000 years trapped in this species-wide fragmentation. Right.
Yeah, 5 millennia. And the sources paint a picture of regression that is difficult to even fully comprehend. We aren't talking about a simple economic depression here.
No, it's way worse. The warp storms that engulfed the galaxy completely severed interstellar travel. So human worlds were just isolated in the dark.
Left to fend for themselves.
Right, and highly advanced civilizations devolved into literal techno-barbarism. People were worshipping plasma reactors as magical artifacts because no one remembered how the underlying physics actually worked.
It's a complete collapse of scientific understanding.
Har-
And on top of that, anyone born with psychic abilities was a massive liability.
Oh, absolutely. Because if uncontrolled psychers were essentially open doors for warp entities to possess them.
Right.
And just rip reality apart.
Exactly. So human societies reacted the only way they could. They hunted them down and burned them as witches. The terror of that era is really the foundational trauma of the entire species.
And stepping right into the center of this absolute chaos is the figure known simply as the Emperor. Now, to understand his actions, we have to look closely at his physiology and his origin.
Because his nature completely dictates his methodology. He's a Gestalt psychic entity.
Right, let's break down the mechanics of that, because the lore traces his origin all the way back to prehistoric Earth. The Immaterium, the warp, wasn't always this tempest of demonic malice, right?
No, not originally, but thousands of years ago, ancient human shamans who were, sensitive to the changing tides of the warp, realized a great malevolent sentience was beginning to coalesce.
And usually human souls just sort of dissolve into the ambient energy of the warp when they die, but these shamans realized they needed to create a psychic anchor to fight what was coming.
What's fascinating here is that they understood individual power was completely insufficient. Their solution was an act of profound collective sacrifice.
Thousands of them committed ritualistic suicide simultaneously, which is just wow.
Yeah. By synchronizing their deaths, they bypass that natural dissolution process in the warp. They force their individual psychic essences to fuse into a single, localized singularity.
Which then reincarnated into a single human vessel. So by the time the 30th millennium rolls around, the Emperor is essentially 38,000 years old.
Right. He has walked the earth in secret for millennia, guiding from the shadows, occasionally stepping into the light as major historical figures like Alexander the Great or Jesus Christ to nudge humanity back on track.
But the Age of Strife proved that subtle nudges were no longer viable. The galaxy was too hostile, the warp was just too dangerous. He decides he has to take direct control, starting with Terra. But the unification wars on Earth are where I really start to see a massive cognitive dissonance in his character.
You're looking at the disposal of the Thunder Warriors, aren't you?
Exactly. I mean, Terra is this radioactive wasteland ruled by techno-barbarian warlords. To conquer them, the Emperor doesn't use diplomacy, he engineers the Thunder Warriors.
Brutal, genetically enhanced killers.
Designed for one specific environment. The irradiated meat grinder of Earth. And they do exactly what they were built to do. They conquer the planet for him.
And the moment the final battle is won,
He doesn't give them medals or a peaceful retirement. He unleashes his newly minted, supposedly superior space marines to butcher them down to the last man. He deems his own loyal warriors too unstable for the next phase of his plan.
the Unification Wars really provide a perfect microcosm of his overarching philosophy. He evaluates the Thunder Warriors not as loyal veterans, but as obsolete, hazardous machinery.
Right. It's like a startup founder bringing in this ruthless, loyal team to build the company from the ground up, only to, lock them in the boardroom and set the building on fire the day before the IPO. It's brutal.
That's a great analogy. If a tool poses a risk to the blueprint, you discard it. And this extreme utilitarianism also forms the bedrock of the imperial truth.
Oh, wait, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second, looking at the codex descriptions of the Immaterium. The imperial truth isn't just standard atheism, right? It is an aggressive, militant eradication of all religion across the galaxy.
Complete eradication. Superstition, magical thinking, all of it.
Yeah. And on the surface, burning down churches and enforcing cold rationality looks like standard tyrannical dictator behavior. But if we look at the mechanics of how the warp functions, the Immaterium is literally fueled by emotion and belief.
Exactly. Worship isn't just a cultural practice in this universe.
Right, it acts as a directed funnel of psychic energy.
Yeah.
It actively feeds the chaos gods. So wasn't his absolute tyranny actually the most mathematically sound weapon he had? I mean, if a predator tracks you by your scent, you scrub the scent off, even if you had to take a layer of skin with it.
You are identifying the exact cold calculus the Emperor used to justify the imperial truth. He realized that ambient emotion is like background radiation. It's there, but it's diffuse. Worship, however, acts as a magnifying glass, focusing sunlight into a laser beam. It gives form, sentience, and immense power to the entities residing in the warp.
So by violently enforcing atheism, he wasn't trying to win a philosophical debate at all.
Not at all. He was executing a starvation tactic. He was trying to cut the supply lines to the chaos gods.
Ask yourself, as a listener, would you accept a merciless dictator if it literally meant saving your species' soul from cosmic horrors? He's faced with a binary choice. Let humanity keep its faith and inevitably be consumed, or strip away their spiritual humanity to save their biological existence.
But to pull off a galactic conquest to enforce this massive quarantine of belief, he needs generals. A 38,000-year-old Gestalt entity cannot micromanage a million battlefronts simultaneously.
Right, he needs proxies. Which brings us to the creation of the Primarchs. Even an immortal needs middle management, I guess.
This necessitates the Primarchs, yeah. If the Emperor operates on divine scale and baseline humanity operates on a mortal scale, the Primarchs are the engineered bridge between the two.
The source texts describe them not just as generals, but as absolute masterpieces of transhuman engineering. I mean, they are massive, imposing figures the size of small tanks.
Possessing intellects that make standard supercomputers look like abacuses?
Yeah, but the physical and mental augmentations aren't even their most powerful traits. It's their charisma. They have this innate aura-level magnetism.
It's biological compulsion.
Right. A Primarch can walk onto a non-compliant human world, and millions of people will just drop to their knees in weeping devotion just by looking at them. It's built into their genome.
They were designed to be the ultimate instruments of compliance.
Yeah.
But the Emperor's laboratory was breached.
The Chaos Gods strike back.
Exactly. The Chaos Gods, perceiving the existential threat this Primarch project posed to their sustenance, engineered a localized warp vortex deep within the genetic vaults on Terra.
The Geller fields around the gestation pods fail, and these 20 infant demigods are sucked into the warp and just scattered across the entire galaxy. And this is where the Grand Design suffers its first really critical structural failure.
Because they aren't raised in a controlled environment by a singular creator anymore.
No, they land on wildly different human-colonized worlds, many of which are absolute, brutal nightmares.
The scattering ensures that the Primarchs are fundamentally shaped by diverse and often horrific environmental traumas. They adapt to the specific worlds they land on.
We see this so clearly when the Emperor finally launches the Great Crusade and begins the reunification, finding them one by one over decades. But looking at the roster of these beings and the sources, there's a glaring pattern of severe psychological damage.
Severe is almost an understatement.
Right. You have Angron, who landed on a slaver world and had the butcher's nails literally physically hammered into his brain. These archaeotech implants that replace all cognitive function with blinding rage.
Then you have Kurz.
Yeah, Kurze, who grew up completely alone in the lightless, crime-ridden underhives of Nostromo. He develops this brutal, terror-based sense of justice. Or Perturabo, cursed with an innate paranoia and a mind that constantly sees the flaws and weaknesses in everything, including his own brothers.
The transhuman psychology here is just vital to understand. The Emperor engineered their bodies to be nearly invincible, but their emotional architecture was still essentially human, albeit scaled up to mythical proportions.
Scaled up humanity. That sounds dangerous.
It is. A demigod's vanity is 100 times more potent than a mortal's. A demigod's insecurity is apocalyptic.
And here's where I really have to question the Emperor's legendary intellect. How does a being who has observed humanity for 38 millennia fail to see that handing a legion of hyper-lethal space marines to someone like Angron is a ticking time bomb?
It's baffling.
Right. You have these incredibly gifted, severely traumatized demigods, and instead of giving them therapy or, I don't know, a hug, he just hands them an army, points at the stars, and says, "Go, conquer in my name."
The failure stems from his profound detachment. Over millennia, the Emperor had shed his ability to empathize with mortal fragility.
He just lost touch.
Completely. He looked at Angron's butcher's nails or Kurz's psychotic visions and saw them only as variables in a strategic equation. If an instrument is damaged but still capable of breaking enemy lines, you just continue to deploy it until it shatters.
Wow.
He fundamentally misunderstood that by demanding blind obedience without cultivating mutual trust or offering any love, he was building an empire on a fault line of resentment.
He treated transhuman beings like basic algorithms. Input, give them an army. Output, galactic conquest.
Yeah.
But algorithms don't have daddy issues.
No, they don't.
And the Emperor's management style just massively exacerbates this by creating a clear hierarchy of favoritism. The lore explicitly highlights Horus Lupercal. Horus is the brightest, the most adaptable, the most politically savvy, and undeniably the Emperor's absolute favorite.
Then you have Limon Russ, fiercely loyal, acting as the Emperor's unquestioning executioner, the Wolf King.
Yeah, and Sanguinius, the noble, angelic figure who, by the way, carries a deep, secret shame regarding the genetic flaws mutating his own legion.
This dynamic creates an intensely competitive, emotionally volatile environment among the 20 brothers.
A recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. They are constantly vying for the approval of an emotionally absent father who only rewards them based on their planetary compliance rates.
And let's look at the mechanics of that compliance during the Great Crusade, because absolute ideals rarely survive contact with reality. The methodology is breathtakingly stark.
It's compliance or death.
Yeah, when the expeditionary fleets arrive at a lost human colony, they don't open trade negotiations. They issue the ultimatum. Accept the imperial truth, surrender your planetary sovereignty, pay massive tithes, or face orbital bombardment and forced subjugation.
And if you are an alien species, there isn't even an ultimatum.
Right, no negotiation whatsoever. The mandate is immediate, total extermination. Xenospecies are just wiped from the galactic map without a second thought to secure absolute human dominance.
It is a crusade of absolute xenophobia and forced homogenization. But to sustain a logistical war machine of that magnitude, capable of conquering 1,000,000 worlds, Terra's manufacturing capabilities were vastly insufficient.
It needed more guns.
It needed a lot more. The Emperor required the industrial forge world of Mars.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This introduces the most massive, glaring loophole in the Emperor's entire ideology. Mars is ruled by the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Right, the tech priests.
They aren't just engineers, they are a sprawling, fanatical cult of cyborgs who literally worship technology. They believe machines possess spirits, and their highest deity is the Omnissiah, the machine god.
So the Emperor, the man violently eradicating religion across the galaxy to starve the warp, arrives on Mars.
And instead of crushing them for being a religion, he signs the Treaty of Olympus, he makes an alliance, he grants the Mechanicus a complete exception to the imperial truth. It's incredible hypocrisy. It's like banning all sugar in a diet plan, but allowing yourself to eat a whole cake every single day because the baker gave you a free oven.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the cognitive dissonance of the Treaty of Olympus is staggering, yes. But it highlights the Emperor's pragmatic ruthlessness.
The cold calculus again.
Exactly. He recognized a fixed point in his strategic timeline. A war with Mars would be mutually destructive and delay the crusade by centuries. He needed Martian tech to win. He weighed the existential threat of the warp against the immediate necessity of manufacturing, and he compromised his own foundational law.
But looking at the sources, the long-term cost of this compromise is devastating. By allowing the Mechanicus to retain their religious monopoly on technology, the Emperor inadvertently doomed the Imperium to technological stagnation for the next 10,000 years.
Because to the Mechanicus, innovation is heresy.
Right.
You do not improve upon the divine designs of Machine God. You merely maintain them through ritualistic preservation. The Emperor essentially accepted a future of intellectual decay to secure the immediate present.
But, despite the massive hypocrisy, the sheer brute force of the Crusade works. Over 200 years, they reclaim the galaxy. Humanity is united for the first time since the Dark Age of technology.
The Empire is vast and seemingly invincible.
And it is precisely at this moment of total triumph that the Emperor commits his most catastrophic error, the Great Abandonment. After a huge victory at Ulanor, the Emperor abruptly hands control of the entire military apparatus to Horus, names him War Master, and just leaves. He returns to Earth.
To understand the sheer shock of this decision, we must analyze the Emperor's ultimate, deeply hidden objective, which is the Webway Project.
Ah, the secret basement project.
Exactly. The Great Crusade was merely the physical reclamation of territory. Phase 2 was the psychic emancipation of the species.
Let's explain the mechanics of warp travel here because it's essential for the listener to grasp. To travel faster than light, human ships have to tear a hole in reality and travel through the immaterium.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, if space is dry land, the warp is an ocean during a Category 5 hurricane, filled with predatory leviathans. Ships use Geller fields, these bubbles of real space, to protect themselves. But it's slow, unpredictable, and highly lethal.
The Emperor sought to bypass this entirely. He had discovered the subterranean ruins of the Webway, a dimension-spanning network of stable, shielded tunnels.
Built millions of years ago by an ancient race.
Right, the old ones.
So if the warp is a hurricane, the Webway is like a high-speed, reinforced glass tunnel built right into the ocean floor. You can travel anywhere, instantly, without ever touching the water. If the Emperor could build a new, human-controlled access point to this network on Terra, humanity would never need to enter the warp again.
It would be completely isolated from the Chaos Gods.
The starvation tactic would be absolute and complete.
But the psychic engineering required to punch into the Webway and shield the human workers constructing the new pathways required the Emperor's undivided, localized concentration.
He had to sit on a device called the Golden Throne, right?
Yes. Acting as a living psychic battery and shield, holding the conceptual weight of a dimension open with his mind. He simply could not do this while leading fleets.
So he locks himself in the Imperial dungeons. But the fatal flaw isn't the project, it's the absolute failure of communication. He leaves Horus and the Primarchs to finish the crusade, but crucially, he does not tell them why he is leaving.
Complete silence.
He doesn't explain the Webway. He doesn't explain the true nature of the Chaos Gods. He just issues an edict of blind obedience and shuts the door. It's like the CEO of a company leaving the day before the biggest merger in history, locking himself in the basement to build a secret server room and just telling the board, do whatever the new guy says. It's a masterclass in how not to communicate.
And he fundamentally underestimates the phenomenon of transhuman dread. The Primarchs, who had defined their entire existence by their proximity to his light and his approval, are suddenly thrust into a vacuum.
They feel profoundly abandoned.
And betrayed. The father who fought beside them for 2 centuries has abandoned them for a secret basement project. He expects them to function like machines, just executing orders.
But they are emotional beings.
Yes, and he fails to realize that by leaving them in the dark, he has fertilized the soil for intense resentment to grow.
And nature abhors a vacuum. Where the Emperor left silence, the Chaos Gods begin to whisper. They observe the Emperor's retreat to Terra, they deduce the nature of the Webway project, and they realize their own extinction is imminent. The starvation is about to begin.
The intelligence of the ruinous powers here is terrifying. They don't launch a frontal assault. They employ a surgical strike against the structural integrity of the Emperor's command chain.
They target the linchpin, Horus.
Exactly, Horus Lupercal.
Because if you want to collapse a house, you don't attack the roof, you attack the main load-bearing pillar. The corruption of Horus is a complete masterclass in psychological manipulation.
It starts on the moon of Davin.
Right. During a campaign, Horus is wounded by a stolen, chaos-tainted xenotech blade. It's a wound that even his crazy transhuman physiology cannot heal.
He falls into a coma.
And as he lies there dying, his subordinates, desperate to save him, bring him to a local warrior lodge, which is secretly a front for a chaos cult.
And within the fever dreams of his coma, the Chaos Gods project a heavily curated vision of the future directly into his mind.
They show him a future that is the absolute antithesis of the imperial truth. They show him an imperium where science and reason have been replaced by a fanatical, rotting theocracy.
Nightmare.
Yeah. They show him billions of humans worshiping the Emperor as a divine god. And crucially, they show him a future where Primarchs are nowhere to be found.
The brilliance of this manipulation is that it is fundamentally built on truth, but entirely stripped of context. The Chaos Gods weaponize the Emperor's history against him.
The Thunder Warriors.
Yes. They remind Horus of the Thunder Warriors. They whisper, "Your father used you to conquer the galaxy, and now that the wars are ending, he is preparing to discard you. He is building a godhood for himself on Terra, and you are just obsolete machinery."
Because Horus knows for a fact his father ordered the genocide of the Thunder Warriors, this lie lands with devastating weight. Horus awakens from the coma changed, but the real tragedy is that he doesn't wake up wanting to burn the galaxy for the sake of being evil.
No, he believes he's the hero.
Exactly. He awakens believing he is acting righteously. He thinks he's the only one capable of saving humanity from a tyrant who intends to purge them all. He views the chaos entities not as masters, but as useful, temporary tools in a righteous rebellion.
He falls prey to the classic trap of hubris, believing he can harness the primordial forces of the universe and somehow remain uncorrupted.
Right.
Once his conviction solidifies, he systematically weaponizes the emotional damage of his brothers. He approaches Perturabo, exploiting his paranoia and lack of recognition.
He goes to Angron.
Gives Angron a target for his blind, agonizing rage. He cultivates Fulgrim's obsessive pursuit of perfection.
And here is the mind-bending cosmic irony of the entire heresy. Horus rebels to prevent the nightmare future the Chaos Gods showed him. But by starting the Civil War, he sets off the exact chain of events that causes that nightmare future to become reality. It is the ultimate closed-loop, self-fulfilling prophecy.
If he had just done nothing,
the Webway would have been finished and the nightmare never would have happened. But instead, the revelation of this treachery manifests at Istvan V, the drop site massacre.
Let's look at the mechanics of this battle, because this is where the Cold War goes blindingly hot. Horus secures the loyalty of half the Space Marine legions in secret.
Half of them. That's insane.
When the Emperor finally learns of the rebellion, he sends 7 loyalist legions to crush Horus on the planet Istvan V. 3 loyalist legions form the first wave, dropping into a fortified canyon to engage Horus's entrenched forces.
And the Loyalists expect the remaining 4 legions, acting as their second wave, to secure the drop zone behind them and reinforce the assault, right?
Right, but Horus had already secretly turned those 4 reserve legions to his cause.
Oh man, so when the first wave of Loyalists takes heavy casualties and falls back to rearm at the landing zone, they look up to see their reinforcements, their own brothers, lowering their weapons and opening fire on them.
The psychological shock is almost as devastating as the physical destruction.
I can't even imagine. Astartes were genetically hardwired to feel this intense biological brotherhood. The concept of Space Marines slaughtering Space Marines was practically unthinkable to them.
The Loyalists are caught in a crossfire of heavy ordnance and demigod-led butchery.
The scale of the slaughter is unfathomable. Nearly 3 entire legions are wiped from existence in hours.
Istvan V absolutely shatters the Imperium's military spine. From there, the galaxy plunges into 7 years of apocalyptic civil war. The Ruing Storm, a massive warp anomaly engineered by chaos, physically divides the galaxy.
Disrupting loyalist communications and navigation.
Yes. Horus drives a bloody spear through the cosmos, aiming directly for the Sol system.
Which brings us to the climax of the conflict, an event that defines the setting forever, the Siege of Terra. For months, the Sol system is a massive meat grinder. The defensive void shields of the Imperial Palace endure orbital bombardment that literally boils the oceans of Earth away.
Trillions die.
Trillions. The loyalist Primarchs who manage to reach Terra are fighting a desperate, agonizingly slow retreat. But then, a bizarre anomaly occurs. In orbit above a burning Earth, the defensive shields on Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, suddenly drop.
To this day, the archives debate the reason. Was it a glitch caused by the warping of reality around the ship, or was it an act of supreme arrogance by Horus, inviting his father to a final duel?
Whatever the cause, the Emperor seizes the momentary opening. He teleports aboard the flagship with an elite strike force, including the Primarch Sanguinius.
But teleporting through a chaos-saturated atmosphere scatters the strike force throughout the massive, corrupted vessel.
Right. Sanguinius, the beautiful winged angel of the Blood Angels, arrives at the bridge first. And the sources point out something vital here. Sanguinius has the gift of foresight. He knew before he ever stepped onto the ship that he was going to die. He saw his own death.
He knew exactly what was coming.
But despite knowing the outcome, despite facing a brother who is now physically bloated and pulsating with the combined power of the 4 Chaos Gods, he doesn't retreat.
He engages Horus in an act of pure, sacrificial defiance. He manages to land a microscopic chink in Horus's armor, but the power disparity is just too vast.
Yeah, Horus bludgeons Sanguinius to death, snaps his neck, and just tosses his broken body aside. And that is the exact moment the Emperor walks through the blast doors.
The timing is tragic.
He steps onto the bridge, sees the ruined body of his most noble son, and for the first time in 38 millennia, the cold, calculating gestalt entity known as the Emperor is overwhelmed by an entirely human emotion: vengeance.
The psychic duel that follows transcends physical combat. The energies they unleash against each other are so violently concentrated they begin to unspool the localized fabric of reality.
Wow.
But within this titanic struggle, the core tragedy of the Emperor's psychology is finally laid bare.
Despite the staggering amounts of chaos energy flowing through Horus, the Emperor still possesses the sheer psychic weight to obliterate him instantly. He has the power to end the rebellion with a single thought. But as he gathers that lethal strike, he hesitates.
He looks at the monster trying to tear the galaxy apart, and for a fraction of a second, the Emperor's transhuman detachment fails.
He sees his son.
Yes, he sees the charismatic, brilliant boy he found on the world of Chthoniya. He sees the son he spent centuries conquering the stars with. Beneath all those layers of enforced rationality, he feels love.
And this is where the irony becomes physically painful. After millennia of operating with robotic logic, after wiping out entire alien species without a second thought, ordering the genocide of his own Thunder Warriors, and treating his demigod sons like disposable chess pieces, this is the moment he decides to be a dad, right now.
When the fate of the entire human species is balancing on the edge of a knife.
Exactly.
The Emperor spent his existence trying to suppress human emotion, believing it to be the vector for chaos corruption. He believed his cold rationality was his absolute armor.
But it failed him.
Yet, when confronted with the ultimate culmination of his failures, his repressed humanity violently surfaces. And that sudden, surfacing love becomes his fatal weakness.
Because Horus doesn't share that hesitation, chaos has burned away whatever love the War Master had left. Horus exploits his father's split-second pause and delivers a catastrophic, mortal blow. He shatters the Emperor's spine, crushes his windpipe, and severs his arm.
It is brutal.
It is only as the Emperor is bleeding out on the deck, feeling his life slipping away, that the cold logic finally returns. He accepts that his son is gone. The entity wearing Horus's face is nothing but a meat puppet for the Chaos Gods.
With a final, agonizing surge of willpower, the Emperor summons a psychic lance of such concentrated lethality that it doesn't just kill Horus's physical body, it vaporizes his very soul.
Erased from existence.
He totally erases Horus's essence from the Immaterium, ensuring the ruinous powers can never resurrect him. The War Master falls, the chaos energies dissipate, the Loyalists win the war.
But let's look at the prize of this victory. The Emperor's body is a ruined, dying husk. His loyal guard discovers him and rushes him back to Terra. And this is where the horrific mechanics of the Golden Throne come into play. The Webway project is completely destroyed, flooded with demons.
So they had to plug the Emperor's shattered body into the Golden Throne,
repurposing it into the most macabre life support system ever conceived.
The throne serves two vital functions in the aftermath. First, it anchors the Emperor's soul to his rotting body, preventing him from fully dying. Second, it amplifies his vast psychic consciousness, projecting it into the warp as a beacon.
The Astronomicon. It's a psychic lighthouse. Without it, human ships cannot navigate the treacherous currents of the warp. Interstellar travel would cease and the Imperium would fragment back into the Age of Strife instantly.
Everything would be lost.
But keeping this lighthouse burning, holding back the demonic tides trying to breach the broken webway gate beneath the palace, requires an exorbitant amount of energy.
The Emperor's lingering life force is not enough. To sustain the machinery, the Imperium must feed it.
And the cost is staggering.
Every single day, 1,000 human psychers are gathered from across the galaxy in specialized black ships. They're brought to the Imperial Palace, wired into the intricate arcane machinery of the throne, and their psychic essence is violently siphoned away.
It's an industrialized meat grinder of souls. The Emperor is trapped within his own decaying corpse. He cannot speak. He cannot move. He is fully conscious, screaming silently in agony, forced to sustain his empire by cannibalizing the very people he sought to protect. So what does this all mean?
And while he endures this eternal torment, he is forced to watch as the survivors of the heresy, traumatized and desperate for meaning in a broken galaxy, completely abandon his foundational philosophy.
Because without his physical presence to enforce the atheistic imperial truth, human nature just reasserts itself. They look at his sacrifice and deify him.
The imperial cult takes root. They build ecclesiarchy, a sprawling, fanatical, oppressive religious hierarchy. They burn heretics at the stake. They enforce rigid, unthinking dogma.
They declare the Emperor to be the one true god of humanity, the exact superstitious, rotting theocracy that Horus was shown in his vision. The vision that started the war becomes the definitive reality of the Imperium.
It's the ultimate tragedy.
The Emperor burned down religion to starve the warp, and now he is the focal point of the largest, most fanatical religion in galactic history.
Furthermore, the threat was never truly eliminated. The surviving traitor legions, the Astartes who followed Horus, retreat from Terra and flee into a massive tear in reality known as the Eye of Terror.
Saturated in raw warp energy.
There, saturated in the raw energies of the Immaterium, they do not die. They mutate. They become immortal Chaos Space Marines waging a bitter 10,000-year-long war against the Imperium.
So we have to ask ourselves, looking through all these codexes and historical notes, what is the ultimate takeaway? The Emperor had the intellect to conquer the stars. He had the military might to reshape the galaxy. His science was peerless.
But he failed.
He failed because he arrogantly believed he could mathematically solve human nature. He believed that raw logic could legislate away the messy, irrational realities of emotion.
He engineered a perfect, flawless machine of conquest, but he willfully ignored that the gears of that machine were sentient beings. By replacing paternal affection with a demand for blind obedience, by offering his demigod generals silence instead of context, he fertilized the very soil where chaos planted the seeds of rebellion.
Efficiency without empathy is merely a different vector for tyranny.
Exactly. The thematic core here is that pure intellect and logic, devoid of empathy and emotional intelligence, is a direct path to destruction.
And it leaves you, our listener, with a profound and lingering question to mull over long after you close these sources. The Emperor's grand design was utterly annihilated because he finally felt love at the exact microsecond he couldn't afford to when he hesitated to strike down his corrupted son.
Right.
So, does this mean his catastrophic mistake was finally feeling that emotion, or was his true mistake trying to bury it for 38,000 years in the first place, ensuring that when it finally surfaced, it would burst out as a fatal weakness?
That is the question.
Think about that in our own lives. When we try to lead our teams, our organizations, or our families through cold, unyielding logic, actively ignoring the emotional realities of the people relying on us, are we just building our own golden thrones? Are we constructing a cage of our own flawless logic that we will eventually be trapped inside, watching everything we built rot around us?
The ladder of purely logical progress is an illusion if we refuse to bring our humanity with us as we climb. The moment you discard empathy for efficiency, the ladder shatters.
And you are left staring into the abyss of the 41st millennium. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Horus Heresy. You are now armed with the mechanics of the greatest tragedy in galactic history. Keep questioning the lore and keep exploring the depths.